Welcome everyone. In this series of videos we are going to be doing some unique AutoCAD functions. We are going to be utilizing some AutoCAD commands, combining those commands, and storing them so that they can be used later. And basically kind of the whole outcome of this set of videos will be for us to create what's called a dynamic block. And it's an AutoCAD term. So there are actually four types of blocks. There is block, a W block, which is a file stored outside of our file. There is a dynamic block, which is a block that has motion commands stored and that can be used at a later time. And there's something called an XREF, which is a block that can live in multiple files at once, and by editing that block, all those multiple files are updated. So today we're going to be covering this concept of dynamic block, and I have completed this dynamic block here in AutoCAD. So give you a quick preview of what's going to happen. So as I select this bolt, I have three what are called grips. This grip here is simply the origin at which the block is inserted. This triangle that's pointing down here controls the length of the block, and this triangle here controls the size, meaning diameter of the bolt. And of course, as the diameter of the body of the bolt changes, the dimensions that control the head of the bolt change as well. So this is going to be our focus, and we're going to be operating inside a unique area in AutoCAD, and it's this area here that is called block editor. So this block editor is not completely unique. You may see this repeatedly, but one of the things that you are going to see that comes up is this additional set of properties. And in this additional set of properties, there are parameters that we can set. There are actions that we can apply to the parameters. And there are even parameter sets that are pre-programmed for us. And then there are constraints that we could apply if we needed to do that. So for this dynamic block, we are going to be utilizing some parameters and utilizing some actions as well. So let's talk through a few of these things. So the process that we're going to work through is to define some parameters. And these parameters are like nouns in the English language in a sentence. It's the part of the sentence that is going to be acted on by the verb. So an analogy might be if we want to use the move command, we would select a couple lines. Those lines that we select would be the parameters or nouns. And once we had those couple lines selected, then we would select the move command in AutoCAD, and that would be similar to the verb. So if we look at this second paragraph up here, this is these block actions, and they are what are like verbs. So similar to the move command. So the actions are going to be applied to the parameters that we define earlier in the process. And so in this dynamic block, we have this noun-verb scenario going on. So we are going to be using two types of parameters, these nouns, linear parameter and lookup parameter. And we're going to use two types of verbs, a stretch action and a lookup action. So what is that? What do we need, and how is that going to work for us? So I've got a slide here that shows the bolt in two configurations. And we can notice that the overall length of the bolt needs to be able to change, and the diameter of the bolt needs to change. And as those two, or I should say as the bolt diameter changes, then a number of dimensions associated with the head are going to need to change as well. A head thickness is going to need to get thicker, and of course the size of the head is going to need to get larger as well. So what does this dynamic block environment look like, for instance, if we're done? This is a screenshot of the dynamic block as it's completed, and you can notice that there's a number of what looks like dimensions. There's a length, a bolt diameter, there's a head thickness, there's a G, which I utilize the name simply because that is the dimension label in our original bolt assignment, and G is the distance across the corners of the hex. And G divided by 2 is the distance across one face of that hex. And we'll take a look at that in AutoCAD exactly what that means. And in this screenshot you can also see a number of small kind of grayish white boxes. And so this screenshot simply highlights that the blue dimensions are parameters. So they're really not dimensions. They're kind of program parameters that allow us to change that value in the future. And the little white boxes are a simply graphical representation of the actions that have been applied to those parameters. And if you look down toward the middle of the screen, you can see this cyan triangle that is labeled bolt length, and just below that the cyan triangle that is labeled size, and the two white boxes that are there. The triangle with the text is the lookup table parameter, and the little white box is the lookup table action that is applied to that. So our workflow is going to be to create all these parameters and then slowly begin to apply actions. And each time we apply an action, we're going to want to do some testing to make sure that the action actually does what we think it should. Okay, so with that, we can begin to come back and look at AutoCAD, and we're ready to get started. So of course it's already been a couple minutes here, and what I will do is close off this introductory session and we'll get started in the next section.